Welcome to Putting Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert. Listen, I don't want to spend a lot of time here up front because this is a long episode that is dropping today, but it's because we're discussing a pretty lengthy section within the show Passion. We're talking about the entirety of the flashback scene, plus some of the soldiers' gossip at the beginning. So rather than talk your ear off, let's jump into this week's episode, and I'll catch you up on some things next week.
Did you hear the scream last night?
Did anybody knock for a ball on the side?
She knows how to scream all right.
Well, she practices a lot.
Good shot. 6 balls.
Shannon Migliore, thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me again.
I mean, because you have been here before, we've heard a little bit about your past with like musical theater and Sondheim in general. So I'm infinitely curious as far as your history with Passion. Do you even remember the first time you came across it?
I don't know when exactly it was the first time that I knew that it was a musical. I know for myself that I have not always in my past been the most open to listening to new things, especially if there's someone like Stephen Sondheim, who I loved Into the Woods, and I loved Sweeney Todd and all of those shows. It was hard for me to want to listen to other things, especially ones that maybe I had heard weren't maybe the greatest in their reception.
Sure.
And not that Passion, I think, is one of the worst ones. Like obviously Merrily would be one of those. It took me a while to come to Merrily, but I took to Passion about at the same time I came to Assassins.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I was being silly and that I should just get with it and start listening to all of these works because I was sure that if I liked the other ones, I could at least give these ones a try. I was driving one day and I said, okay, I'm going to listen to Assassins and then I'm going to listen to Passion and we'll go from there.
It was a long trip that you're going to listen to these two cast albums back to back.
It was a long trip. So I figured I had the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were obviously very, very different. But
Sure.
I would say I didn't like Assassins as much as I liked Passion, but I didn't think about it for a little bit after that. And then I kind of found myself coming back to Passion a lot. I think that this score is very lush in the way that it is composed and written, and I love the motivic values in this score. And it's very, I don't know if anybody has said this on the podcast so far this season, but it's very operatic in the storytelling.
For sure.
Especially, so a joke a lot in opera is that it takes the person who is going to die, it takes them so long to die. And I feel that way. I feel that way about Fosca. I'm like, oh my gosh, we see her like dying in her bed so many times. I'm like, when is she gonna die? And I feel very much like that with opera as well. And the way that there isn't a whole lot of, quote unquote, action in this story also kind of lends itself to the subject matter could have been in opera. It's also very classically leaning vocally.
The interesting thing about this is that Sondheim completely rejects the whole opera description to a few of his shows. He's not the biggest opera fan either. Mm-hmm. And yet I 1,000% agree with regards to this show. It's like, this is very operatic throughout the entire thing.
Yeah, it definitely, I understand that he didn't want it to be seen that way, but I think that there is a lot that you just can't deny with this show, right, very specifically.
If you didn't want it to be called an opera, maybe you shouldn't have written an opera. Maybe
exactly. So yeah, I think it's super interesting though, the way that this is just the style that he chose for the vocals for this, and then as well as the plot line of the story.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the plot line does lend itself to kind of standing there and singing about your feelings or singing about how you interpret what the other person is doing to you. So I think that's also a little bit about why this feels like at the very least, a light opera that we're watching.
For sure. And I think that I studied classical voice in college. So I was a mezzo-soprano, and I have always loved the material that Fosca sings in this show. Obviously, maybe she isn't the most exciting, stunning, beautiful character to play, but I have always found the repertoire of her characters singing to be very very fun to sing along with, to study the vocal structure of. And I don't know, this is just one that I, despite the dreary subject matter, I find myself listening to this a lot because I think that it's kind of easy and the melodies just get stuck in my head all the time.
Do you get the uniforms thing stuck in your head like I do?
I do. And honestly, in the song that we're going to be talking about today, the Austria, Count Ludwig of Austria, that gets
Right.
stuck in my head routinely.
Sorry, just as a quick little side note, just so you know, and we'll see if this gets kept in the episode. In about 8 minutes, I have to go and take my bread out of the oven. So
Amazing. What kind of bread are you baking?
Oh, I'm just making like just regular, whole wheat bread. I don't do
That's
anything
awesome.
fancy, but
That's great.
I make a loaf every weekend. So
Perfect. That's great.
and I didn't time it out properly today.
That's okay. I for some reason in my head had that I thought we were starting this recording at noon. So I was like rushing around this morning and I got on and I said, you know what? I don't actually think it's noon, which was honestly a great thing because I had, okay, I had ordered the vocal score for this show
Amazing.
straight up. I ordered it like 2 weeks ago, but I to save a little bit of money, I didn't order it just off of Amazon where I could have gotten it in 2 days.
Sure.
I ordered it off another website and it was supposed to get here today and it said anytime between 1:30 and 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, I'm going to miss it and I'm not going to be able to look at all the things I want to look at in the music. And then it came and I said, wow, I have time to look now. So that's what I spent the last hour doing.
That's amazing. Yeah. Technically it was noon my time, but yes, 2
Oh,
o'clock your
maybe
time.
that's probably why I thought that. Okay, cool.
I like that you are surfing the Sondheim dark web to find relevant
Yeah.
materials for research.
Well, I, especially with this one, like I got the one for Assassins as well, but
Mhm.
there wasn't as much musically that I could really dive into with the song that we did for Assassins. But Passion, I said, I have to look at it. The structure of this show is so interesting, even in the way that he writes about it in his book. It's like, the songs are songs in the proper way that songs would be in another musical. I just wanted to lay my eyes on it, and I was really sad if it wasn't going to come on time.
Yeah, fair enough. Through that little bit of research, investigation, that sort of thing, I guess in regards to what we're going to be discussing today, any like big discoveries that we can delve into a little bit later in the episode, but any like major discoveries you made?
I don't think anything too groundbreaking. I think there's some things that go along with what Fosca presents to Giorgio, the way that she says, well, no one ever taught me how to love. I think she says that in the train scene.
Yeah.
I think that there's some musical context that is given earlier in the show that she sings about in the flashback that kind of connects all of those pieces together. So I'm excited to get into that.
Cool. Well, last couple things here before we move into the song itself. Are you like an original Broadway cast listener, or is there another version that you prefer to listen to?
That is a very good question. I love the original Broadway cast recording. I think Donna Murphy is a gift from God.
Mhm.
I love that recording so much, but I also really like the recording, the John Doyle recording from I think 2013 is when it was.
Is that with Judy Kuhn?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and Rebecca Luker. I think again, both of those women also gifts from God.
I would say honestly, if people are like brand new to the show, that's almost the one I might suggest they listen to first, only because it includes a lot of the book scenes. So you get a good sense of what's going on.
Yeah, that's a big reason that I like it is because we've got, so much more of the context that are behind these songs. Because the original Broadway cast recording is beautiful. And I love, the sound that you got on cast recordings from that era is just unachievable now because of the way that sound technology has progressed since then. I just like the quality of the sound on that album, but I think that the book scenes provide a lot of context that can give someone more kind of grounds to say, hey, maybe the way that this music sounds is not necessarily the way that we feel about the show. Like, because the scenes are some of the scenes in this are very unsettling, but you would never know that from the way that the music sounds, which is a genius. It truly is.
It is. I mean, that was kind of my biggest discovery here so far was the very first song, starting with Happiness. It was like, I've always really listened to that and be like, yeah, they're so happy. And then you really look at those lyrics and I'm like, there's actually some cracks in this. This is not
Absolutely.
actually the happiest of songs when you really look at it.
Yeah, the passive listening to a lot of the songs in this would give you much a very different idea than I think that the show itself is getting at.
Right. Hey everyone, just kind of breaking into the conversation to tell you about some of the people who help this show continue to go. If you'd like to help support the show for absolutely free, you can give a rating and review on whatever app you listen to podcasts in. That's always greatly appreciated. Putting It Together is an independent podcast, which is code for I do everything. So if you'd like to help monetarily, which will only help to grow and make this show better, you can do so over at our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Please do not donate if it impacts you negatively financially. I need to also give a huge shout out to the God That's Good tier on Patreon. That's Alex, Barry, Christopher, David, Jack, Luis, Michael, Mika, Robert, Stephen, and Whitty. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, well, what are we talking about here today?
We are talking about Soldiers Gossip #1 and Flashback.
So definitely the main thrust is going to be the flashback because it's a pretty lengthy sequence. If you can recall, what is happening right before this? So what's the lead up into the Soldiers Gossip?
The scene that comes right before it is when the doctor calls on Giorgio, telling him that Fosca is mortally ill, I believe is the way he says it.
Right.
Which, wow, downer, really. He tells Giorgio that he needs him to go visit Fosca and tell her something that will make her healthy again. So he goes reluctantly to see Fosca, and he's very agreeable with her. He kind of tells her whatever she wants to hear. The whole, what is it that he says? He's like, I love you in whichever way you want me to in this moment.
Yeah.
Then they go into the sequence of what is the song called? I Wish I Could Forget You. Is that what it's called?
I Wish I Could Forget You.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So she sings that at that point where she tells Giorgio to write this down for her, and she sings that song, and it's a letter that she wishes Giorgio would write to her about his feelings that she wishes he had. This is confusing.
It's confusing. It's also, again, this is like you just mentioned, hard to capture kind of on a recording because it is a creepy setup here. She's forcing him to write things he doesn't think.
And
so that
I
she
think
gets
that song is one of my favorite songs probably on the album. And I never would have got that from listening to the original podcast recording.
That's right.
Because it's so, you just wouldn't get it. But then he writes it down and she's like, oh, thank you so much. And he goes away. And then he leaves and then she starts screaming. And then that leads into the Soldiers Gossip, them talking about the scream.
Exactly. So let me read this out, and then I am going to go retrieve my bread from the oven. So this is the first half of the Soldiers Gossip, and I don't remember who is who. I'm just going to say it's just a bunch of soldiers singing back and forth. Did you hear that scream last night? Did anybody not? 4-ball on the side. She knows how to scream all right. Well, she practices a lot. Good shot. 6-ball in the corner. So that wasn't dying, we assume. No, I think she just fell off her broom. Or they hung a mirror in the room of La Signora. La Signora, La Signora, please, a little quiet. And then Giorgio enters into the room.
Hear that scream last night?
Did anybody not?
Your turn, play a card. She knows how to scream all right.
Well, she practices a lot.
I forgot. What's trumps?
Play a bloody card. So that wasn't dying, we assume.
No, I think she just fell off her broom.
Or they hung a mirror in the room of La Signora.
La Signora!
La Signora!
That's enough of me.
Care to play, Captain?
No.
Bread retrieved. What do you want to say about this first half of the Soldier song?
Well, I think that especially I don't know. This is the first one here, but the way that people talk about there not being rhymes in this show,
Right.
this part of the all the soldier stuff has so many rhymes in it, and I think that I don't know. I don't really know. What do you think about that? What do you think Sondheim was going for with that?
Well, I don't know, because we're about to get into like the big lengthy flashback sequence, which also has a bunch of rhymes in it. The way I look at it in Passion specifically is that rhymes are used when characters are being calculated. In this case, I think being either snarky or if they've really considered a point, because some of the letters, for instance, are just don't have rhymes in them. They are full of just like, not to be a pun, but full of passion. And then there are certain letters that are very rhyme heavy, which is like, oh, they thought about this and need to have every line be perfect, sort of thing. So, anyways, that's a long answer to say I think it's supposed to be calculation is when they have rhymes come out.
Sure, I think that's a probably the way I would have seen it as well. But like every other line rhymes in this. We've got nights, right, not, lot, shot. The the way that this is set amongst them playing a game of billiards or pool.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's so funny because it's very conversational, and you can like see this happening in real time. Like it almost isn't a song.
Right.
The way that like boys will be boys and they're just playing some pool and having a chat. I think it's a kind of a genius way to get this feeling of the way how they feel about Fosca into the show, the way that the general populace of the area they're in feels about Fosca.
Right. I mean, not so subtle of an allusion to her being like a witch or being someone who is, again, physically unattractive to them. And also, this is meant to be funny. I brought this up on, well, actually, I've recorded these out of order, so now I don't remember if this is coming up or I've done this before. But regardless, there is another conversation that I had about how without some type of levity in this show, I think it would come off as a bit too oppressive throughout this.
Absolutely.
So the soldier scenes do have this needed benefit of being like, okay, we've had some pretty intense stuff happen and we're about to get into another intense scene. So let's just have a little bit of lightness before we jump back into that.
Yeah, and I did watch the movie last week in preparation for this.
Sorry, the original movie?
Yeah, the original movie.
Yeah.
I had not seen it before, but this is not in there, correct? Am I remembering that right?
Not the billiard scene. I think they're doing something else, or they do show the soldiers like gathering around talking a few times.
Well, I think that it's a really good way, you're right, to put some levity in it and to have the perspective of the people, because you don't get, there's not a ton of characters in this show, and the ones that have their thing. Like the Colonel, he sees his cousin in this one very specific way. And you obviously are getting the way that Fosca interacts with the Doctor and the way that Fosca interacts with Giorgio. But I think it's a really important perspective on the way that everybody else sees her, or the way that we then know that Giorgio feels for her and then starts to feel for her. I think it's important.
I think it's also good to know that they kind of see that there's something going on between these two people. They don't know 100% what's going on. But again, much like how Clara is noticing, like, you talk about Fosca a lot in these letters you're sending to me.
Yeah.
They're kind of saying he hangs around with her a lot, even though he says that he doesn't enjoy it. So there's something going on here. This is the second half of what these soldiers say. So just a bit aloof, don't you think? Not around the Colonel. Gentlemen, never trust a man who doesn't drink, and he keeps a journal, 8-ball off the 9. Maybe though he just prefers his books, not as much as he prefers his looks, which is why he thinks he's got his hooks into La Signora. Gentlemen, I'll make a wager. Come the summer, he'll be major. I'll say.
Just a bit aloof, don't you think?
Not around the Colonel. Gentlemen.
Never trust a man who doesn't drink.
And he keeps a journal.
8-ball off a 9.
Maybe though he just prefers his books, not as much as he prefers his looks.
Which is why he thinks he's got his hooks into La Signora.
Gentlemen, I'll make a wager. Come the summer, he'll be major.
I'll say.
I just want to call it right now. What a lovely rhyme of Colonel and journal.
I have that one written down. I was going to say that.
Yeah.
That's right.
I only kind of noticed that this time. I'm like, oh, that is a rhyme.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, it doesn't, those words look
Nothing
0%
alike.
similar. Yeah. So you have to like be listening to it or saying it out loud, I think, to notice it. But it's really great.
Not to go on a rant, but this, like, how dumb is English that you have to pronounce that word colonel? I'm just
It's
saying.
a horrible word to read. If you put that in front of a child, they'd be like, I have no idea what this is.
What is this?
But I think that this part, so the thing that is happening right before this is that Giorgio confronts the doctor about being a little shady, where
Mhm.
he's like, well, she didn't seem that sick to me.
Right.
So we're coming to this part of the song to see the way that the soldiers, I assume, are talking about that interaction.
I mean, this brings up my other favorite question I've been asking this season is, what is your read on the doctor? Because I think the doctor comes across as like there's some kind of ulterior motive thing that never really gets revealed through this show. But
Yeah.
I don't know. He doesn't feel like he's just like, oh, I'm just a doctor character. There seems to be there's something else going on there.
I think that he is kind of sort of trying to be like a scientist. Like he's experimenting with what will help Fosca because he probably is very intrigued by her as a case because she is so ill and things don't nothing seems to make her feel better and all that
Right.
stuff. So I think that her taking interest in Giorgio has kind of piqued an interest in him as well,
Sure.
where he feels like maybe let's see how far I can push this. And then he realizes that he pushed it too far and tries to correct his errors by sending him away.
Right. Yeah. So gets a little bit over his skis, as some people might say.
And I think that he probably, I mean, it's the way what he says. He never assumes that it would go this far and all that stuff. I think he's being just trying to be a little bit too scientific with their relationship and not think about it as like, oh, these are two people who are going to change through the course of these interactions.
So that is the gossip that the soldiers are discussing. We then segue to Giorgio and the Colonel having this conversation with one another. Yeah, what do we want to say about this book scene before we get into some of the lyrics here?
So they're talking about the Colonel is thanking Giorgio for how much attention he has paid to Fosca and that she doesn't have any friends. And he's really, he feels very indebted to Giorgio for what he has done for Fosca. And then they jump into this flashback. I think that this scene does a whole lot for the musical. I have not read the novella. Like I said, did watch the movie, but during the movie, they don't get Fosca's input on this. It's just the Colonel telling Giorgio.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which
I have to remember. Now I can't remember. It's now been too long. I mean, the flashback or like this backstory absolutely gets revealed in the book. It might be just the Colonel too. It might be just the Colonel who tells him there too. But yes, I agree that having Fosca's input is key here.
I would be really interested to know where they pulled this totally from, because I think this is maybe the part of the show, and naturally as it would be, but the way that it is written in the perspective of two people really gives Fosca it helps us to really understand her a lot better because of all of these things that we would not have known otherwise. In the movie, it's him, the Colonel, just basically saying, this is a thing that happened. She was married, and then this guy did this thing to her, and I have want to go and find him, but he's in prison. I believe he says that in the movie, is that the count, he can't go get him. It doesn't give any of the, I shouldn't say any, it gives some of the retrieval of her character, but the way that they wrote this scene in the musical does so much more for the character of Fosca than it does in the movie.
I have to say too, like, I almost feel like I've rediscovered this musical in many ways, being, doing a podcast about it, because I've read the novel, I watched the movie, I watched the pro shot, I've been re-listening to all the different recordings and stuff like that, and in the best possible way, like, this is such a theatrical moment in the center of this show that I just love. And I like how it's realized. I love how James Lapine directs it. And I think it is so crucial to have this in, because I think, I'm going to be this bold, a lesser dramatist would be like, oh, we can just have the Colonel mention that she used to be married. But I think it's like, no, we really need to take our time and have the audience understand what her backstory is. It can't just be something that's thrown off or told by a different character. We also have to get her feelings to this. So I think it's just kind of a slam dunk. And as far as the theatrical nature of it goes, like they do these really cool things with lights where it looks like it's like sepia or like black and white and stuff sometimes. It's a really cool effect.
Absolutely. And I think that the memory of this it plays into a lot of the musical themes throughout the show where this I guess we'll get there. You know what? I'm not going to get ahead of myself. Let's go through the lyrics.
Let's do this. Here's how it opens up. So Fosca is writing at her table. So she's writing at her table and she goes, "My dear Giorgio, I'm writing you even though the doctor has forbidden it. What a joy to have someone to whom I can tell my feelings, with whom I can share my past." And the Colonel is explaining it to Giorgio. "I was a young man when my parents died and Fosca's mother and father welcomed me into their house whenever I was on leave." And then it's him and Fosca going back here and forth going, as a child, she was lovely. I was happy. Her parents doted on her. My parents doted on me. And then we see the mother and father enter. They said, and then the mother and father are going, "Beautiful, so sensitive, so beautiful. They told me to be careful, of course. Fosca, to them she was, a girl as beautiful as you are, has to, and so, be careful. I thought that I was beautiful. And then I reached the age when being beautiful becomes the most important thing a woman can be."
My dear Giorgio, what a joy to have someone to write to, someone with whom I can share my past.
I was a young man when my parents died, and Fosca's mother and father welcomed me into their house whenever I was on leave. As a child, she was lonely.
I was happy.
Her parents doted on her.
My parents doted on me.
They said, "Beautiful,
so sensitive, so beautiful. They told me to be careful.
Of course,
Fosca.
to them she was a girl as beautiful as you are, has to
And so,
be careful.
I thought that I was beautiful. And then I reached the age where being beautiful becomes the most important thing a woman can be.
An unattractive.
I think that the thing that I love most about this song is that you're getting it from two perspectives. And sometimes the perspectives are not exactly the same. And sometimes they come together and they have the same thoughts. So the first thing in this part of the song that really catches my attention is when the Colonel says she was lonely and then Fosca says I was happy.
Yeah.
Because Fosca, as she states earlier in the show, the way that her cousin treats her, he treats her like a child and he doesn't maybe see her as a full person. He isn't. I think that the way that the Colonel sees Fosca is very that she isn't a whole adult person. Like she is just what Fosca is and nothing else.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of the fine line is like there's obviously like an affection for her, but yeah, he infantilizes her. He thinks she's not capable of like, I don't know, being fully human almost.
Yeah, and she, in her perspective, the greatest love she probably has ever received, before Giorgio comes into her life is from her parents. So she was happy in this moment because she was given this love and affection from her parents, and she was happy about it. It was a place of genuine, true happiness for her. Also, I find it a struggle in this show to find any other places really where she states, "I am happy," except for at the end in her letter before she dies.
Right.
So I think that is a very important piece of this, is that she was happy as a child, even though other people could have seen her in a different way.
I also think it's important that her parents told her explicitly that she was beautiful. Like this is not this whole idea of her being unattractive, ugly is what a lot of people call her throughout the show. It's not something that she's been told her entire life. I don't know. I think that's an interesting little wrinkle into this too.
Yes, absolutely. And they use that word sensitive as well, which we know she is. She's very in tune with this emotional side of herself, as it is Passion, the musical. But that her parents telling her that she's beautiful, and I don't even want to call it disillusioned her, because I don't know that is what happened. I think that they had a genuine love and affection for their child, and they cared for her deeply, and they genuinely saw her as a truly beautiful, sensitive person. So when they, later we find out that they passed on, I think that is something that colors the rest of this for her.
Yeah, and I think this thing that I've been reiterating through multiple seasons of this show is that Sondheim is very intentional when he has characters sing the same lyric with one another.
Yeah.
He always uses it to be, okay, they are aligned. They are thinking the same thing here. And if they're not doing that, then oftentimes they're singing different things. So I think it's really important what we ended off there, because it's the Colonel and Fosca singing over top of one another, her saying, and then I reached the age, and the Colonel saying when she reached the age, but they're singing where being beautiful becomes the most important thing a woman can be. So they are aligned on that. Where it's like,
yes, they definitely are.
You know, we got to the age where beauty is the one thing that, at least in this time period, it was the only thing that a woman had at her disposal. And so they are at least agreeing on that part.
Well, and that's such a thing ingrained from where they would be in society. Like that's something that probably anybody in the time that this novella was written, they probably all would have been able to say that as a unison collective, because that would have been a societal standard. So it makes sense that they would be singing that part together. And especially with the rest of the people in their general periphery feeling in the way that Fosca is an ugly person and that she doesn't have anything to offer.
I should just call back something you have already mentioned, but that so sensitive, so beautiful. That is something that's said about Giorgio too, is it not, at the beginning of the show?
Oh, I don't even think I realized that. Yeah.
He is called sensitive at the very least, but I think he's also called beautiful.
Yeah. They're just different.
This different. Okay, so the song continues on here, and so the Fosca and the Colonel are continuing on. It's the Colonel who starts, who says, an unattractive man, and Fosca goes, as long as you're a man, you still have opportunities. They can still have opportunities, and the mother and father go, beautiful. Whereas if you're a woman, you either are a daughter or a wife. A woman is a flower. You marry, now you're 17, or you're a daughter all your life. Now is the hour. I'd met this young man. This is the Colonel saying that. And Fosca says, I'd seen this young man. He introduced himself, passing by at my club, just below my window. So one day, one evening, I invited him. He tipped his hat to me. Home. Count Ludovic. I must admit that I was flattered. This is my Aunt Teresa and my Uncle Bruno. A count. This is the mother saying that. A count. From where, if I may ask? Austria. Austria. What a beautiful place.
An unattractive man.
As long as you're a man, you still have opportunity. Whereas if you're a woman, you either are a daughter or a wife.
A woman is a flower.
You marry at 17.
Or you're a daughter all your life.
Now is the hour.
I'd met this nice young man.
I'd seen this nice young man.
He'd introduced himself
Passing by
at my club.
just below my window.
So
one day,
one evening I invited him
he tipped his hat to me.
home. Count Ludovic.
I must admit that I was flattered.
This is my Aunt Teresa and my Uncle Bruno.
A count.
From where, may I ask?
Austria.
Austria. What a beautiful place.
Fosca, we have
Reading this out probably makes absolutely no sense, but people can probably pick it up a little bit easier when I've layered in the actual song component here. But yeah, anything you want to say about this section?
I love that you either have to marry or you're a daughter and you're nothing else. I mean, obviously that's a callback to what they were saying before, but I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Like there could be nothing else that a person could be at that time. And, you know, she doesn't say that with him or you're a daughter all your life, but she does say the previous line. They're aligned on this. This is something that they have been told and it has been ingrained in their everyday lives. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just think that's interesting.
I think it is also interesting, as you've mentioned here, about like what they're slightly different stories, but telling the same general idea. Because to Fosca, she's like, I saw this young man passing by just below my window. He tipped his hat to me. But the Colonel said, I met this young man at my club, so I invited him home. So I'm sure both of those are maybe slightly true, or both are true, or I don't know. It's interesting how they both kind of slightly think this is a different setup to what happens next. Yeah,
like they are the one that set it up for themselves.
Right.
Like, and I know that the Colonel, he feels a lot of personal affliction on, he brought this to Fosca, but she, in the way she presents it, was noticing it before he even got to their house. So, and they probably have never, I don't know, spoken about this because it's a sensitive topic and they don't seem like they have that kind of relationship. So maybe that's just a big area of misunderstanding between the two of them, which I think could be a really interesting thing to play up in this.
It isn't. Yeah, this is such like a way to mine that drama, right? It's like each of them is blaming themselves for the same event happening, and they can't get past it because they don't talk to one another.
Also, my favorite, Austria, Count Ludovic of Austria. I love this part.
That's right.
It's so fun.
That's right.
I also like in the in Sondheim's book where it says father, mother, when they say Austria, it says thrilled in quotation.
Yeah, that's right. It's like Austria. Ooh, how fancy.
Yay, how fancy. I love it. It's so funny.
So the colonel says, Fosca, we have a visitor. And she goes, imagine my surprise. I'd like you to meet a new friend, Count Ludovic. He was even more handsome up close. I was amazed to see the Count take such an interest to my cousin. And Ludovic goes, if I had known you were here, Signora, if he had known, of course he knew, I would have brought you many flowers. If I had known, this is the colonel saying that. You do like flowers. Yes, I should have known. I've seen you at your window. Won't you stay for dinner, Count? Do, yes. I've watched you every day since I arrived. I had my suspicions. I had no suspicion. I chose not to see the way you move, the way you gaze at the sky, for love had made me blind. How could I be so blind? Or what I took for love. Within a month, he had asked for her hand. Senora Fosca has been married? Yes.
Fosca, we have a visitor.
Imagine my surprise.
I'd like you to meet a new friend, Count Ludovic.
He was even more handsome up close.
I was amazed to see the Count take such an interest in my cousin. If I had known you were here, Signorina.
If he had known, of course he knew.
I would have brought you many flowers. If I had known you do like flowers.
Yes.
I should have known. I've seen you at your window.
Won't you stay for dinner? Do, yes, Count.
I've watched you every day since I arrived.
I had my suspicions.
I had no suspicions. I chose not to see. The way you move, the way you gaze at the sky.
For love had made me blind.
How could I be so blind?
Or what I took for love.
Within a month, he had asked for her hand.
Senora Fosca's been married.
Yes.
Austria.
So, I mean, that's the big revelation here, is that Fosca has been a married woman in the past. Scandalous, I know, but that is the big revelation in this portion of the song.
Yes, I love this. In this section specifically, there's something that I noticed about the music that I would like to talk about.
Sure. This is another callback, right? Because I watched you every day since you arrived. Is something that's also been sung before.
It's been sung before. When he says, I've seen you at your window. The first time we hear that, and it's the same motif, it's the same melody, Fosca sings that to Giorgio in the garden sequence. I've watched you from my window. I saw you on the day that you arrived. Perhaps it was the way you walked, the way you spoke to your men. It's very similar. So, and this also kind of calls to something she says in the future when she, in the train scene, says to Giorgio, no one has ever taught me how to love before. The only sense of affection she has ever, at least that we know of, that she has received from somebody that has not been like a familial type of love, that has been in this romantic sense, has been from this man who deeply deceived her. But this is the first thing that he has said to her that is like, I admire you. You are someone that I think is very beautiful, and I admire you in this romantic way. And when she sings that to Giorgio earlier in the show, that is when she is telling him of these feelings kind of, concretely for the first time. So I think that is a really interesting thing to think of when she later says, I have not properly been taught how to show romantic affection.
Yeah, it's a nice little bridging throughout the entire show of that emotion. Yeah, that's great. That's cool.
I wish that I had, I don't know, I wish that I had noticed that without having to look at the music, but I was sitting there playing through it on my piano and I was like, oh, that is the same theme. And then I, this morning, just rewatched the pro shot just so it was fresh in my head. And so I remembered that line from the end of the show or from later in the show. And I was like, oh my gosh, that all goes together. How cool is that? But I guess I'm just glad to know it now.
No, I mean, that's the, not to get too nerdy about it, but this is why I love going deep on Stephen Sondheim shows, because there are these things that are very intentionally placed into the music, both lyrically, musically, that are there to call back or call forward to other different moments. So every time you come back to it and it's like, oh my gosh, that thing connects to each other. Of course it would connect to each other.
Of course it would, because it's Sondheim.
The other part I just wanted to call out was the differing stories that are going on here, because Fosca goes, for love had made me blind, and the Colonel was, how could I be so blind, right? So
yeah,
blaming herself versus him blaming himself.
You know, in the book here, it says that Fosca says, I chose not to see, but the way that I remember the recording is it's the Colonel and Fosca saying that. Maybe
It
I'm
could be
wrong,
both of them, yeah.
but I think that is, you know what, let me just check the music. Let me see if I can find this really quick. The interesting thing there is they both had something to gain from this man falling in love with Fosca.
Right.
The Colonel really wanted that to happen for her because then she could be not just a daughter, as he says earlier, but Fosca also had that type of bond to gain from this. So they were both choosing to not have that come into, like, their suspicions come to fruition there. Oh my gosh, I cannot find this. I'm looking and trying to talk at the same time.
You're doing a great job, I have to say.
Yeah, in the music it says it's just Fosca as well. So that's really interesting because I definitely have maybe it's the new recording or something. Maybe it's that Don Doyle recording. I have a very distinct memory of that being both of them. So, well, anyway, I guess I'll have to look later.
The other phrase that gets repeated here is the "if I had known," right? So Ludovic says it first. If I had known, I would have brought flowers, which is, we'll find out here very soon, but him kind of making up a story. And then Fosca goes, if he had known, of course he knew. But then the Colonel then goes later, like, oh, if I had known what kind of man this actually was. So they all get a chance to say the same kind of phrase.
Yes, absolutely.
So the father and mother once again get to say, Austria, Count Ludovic of Austria. And Fosca goes, I sensed in him a danger, deception, even violence. I must admit to some degree that it excited me. And then the mother and father, Austria, Count Ludovic of Austria. Colonel goes, once they were married, once he'd received my uncle's sizable dowry, he traveled a great deal, was unavailable to Fosca. He gambled away the dowry. It didn't take him long to spend all their money. I was forced to go to my parents to borrow from what little savings they had left. And the Colonel goes, then one day, as she was coming from market, and then a mistress appears, Ludovic's mistress appears, and goes, excuse me, you're the wife of a Count Ludovic? Yes. You fool! The man's a fraud, a fake. The trips he said he had to take abroad, he took them so that he could be with me. He calls himself a count, but he's not. He's never had a title in his life. He doesn't have a title, but he does have a wife and a child in Dalmatia. No, you must be mistaken. And the mistress goes, oh, yes.
Austria, Count Ludovic of Austria. I sensed in him a danger, deception, even violence. I must admit to some degree that it excited me. Austria, Count Ludovic of Austria.
Once they were married, once he received my uncle's sizable dowry, he traveled a great deal, was unavailable to Fosca.
He gambled away the dowry. I was forced to go to my parents to borrow from what little savings they had left.
Then one day as she was coming from market...
Excuse me, you're the wife of a Count Ludovic? Yes.
You fool, the man's a fraud, a fake. The trips he said he had to take abroad, he took them so that he could be with me. He calls himself a count, but he's not. He's never had a title in his life. He doesn't have a title, but he does have a wife and a child in Dalmatia.
No, you must be mistaken.
Before the mistress appears, I have one thing. When Fosca sings, I sensed in him a danger, deception, the melody there is, I sense in him a danger, which is, I wish I couldn't love you. And that melody shows up a bunch more times in this sequence, which I think is interesting. I will try to remember to point it out when it happens.
For sure.
But it's just interesting.
So, any thematic reason you can think of to link those together?
I've been thinking about it, and I don't have anything off the top of my head. Like I said, I got the score straight up 30 minutes before we started this recording. But if I can think of something while we're recording, I will let you know. I think that there is one more thing I wanted to say about the section before the mistress comes in.
Yeah.
When Fosca says, I sensed in him a danger, deception, even violence, I must admit to some degree that it excited me. That's like the quintessential like girl falls in love with the bad boy. Um,
For sure.
it's really kind of exactly like that. It's like she is not deterred by this thing, by this like gut feeling that maybe something is wrong. And obviously that comes back to bite her later, but she's kind of taken under the spell of like, oh, this person, he's so mysterious. I could, see myself being with him. I've like fallen in love with him. I was blinded by all of that. I think it's
It's
that must
yeah.
be
It's
a
also like
universal theme, bad boy,
yeah. I mean, tomes have been written about that type of attraction, but I also think it's kind of the key to unlock some of her previous actions and some of the stuff that's going to come up in the show, where there does feel like there is an intentional provocation that she does to Giorgio to get him to like, whether to yell at her or berate her or something like that. That's exciting for her too.
Okay. So now
Not to kink shame people. I'm just saying that it's there.
Just saying. So when we get to this mistress portion, it is I love what happens in the pro shot where she just comes out and also the woman, now granted, I haven't seen every production of this, but she, to me, bears a striking resemblance to Clara.
Right.
And I think that's really, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I found that very interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I always wonder, like, thematically, you could have so much fun as a director or as a creator with this, because it's like, obviously they're using people that are in the cast that they can reuse in these different roles. Some of the soldiers, one of the soldiers is the Ludovic character, for instance.
Yeah.
But you could do that type of twinning. But also, it's like, because this is being told to Giorgio, he's just like putting people into these roles almost and like envisioning people that he knows in real life. You could kind of use that as the explanation. It's like, I only know a few people that I can like visualize their faces. And so I'm going to put them in these positions.
Yes. I think that would be interesting from a director's standpoint. So when she says, he calls himself a count, but he's not, is that, I wish I could, I wish that I could. It's similar there also to the structure, harmonically speaking.
Right.
So I also think that that's interesting there. I have to say that anytime I listened to this section of the music, I could not figure out what the word in Dalmatia is. And I gather that that's a place, but he does have a wife and a child, and what my brain registered that as, and Dalmatian, like a dog.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, he's got a dog.
If I remember correctly now, it's like in Croatia somewhere.
Okay,
is that where the dog breed comes from? I would almost guess yes, but I have no idea if that's true.
Well, I, for many years now, have really thought that was, he had a dog with this secret family. So I was almost a little disappointed to know that it wasn't.
Got you. He has a wife, he has a child, he has a Dalmatian. What else do you need?
This is all the proof that I can give you. Could have brought the dog, So yeah, that I always have found to be interesting. This section is also, the music changes underneath so much. It's very like kind of this flowing before it's these arpeggiated chords and whatnot with like big block chords happening underneath in the bass. And then this, you've got a lot more going on. It's very frantic in comparison to what happened beforehand, which makes sense, textually with what is probably happening in Fosca's mind, because, she's writing this letter to Giorgio. This is a flashback she is having. She's probably remembering it in this way, where it was frantic for her, because obviously no one likes to hear this news.
No. I just like how it starts. It's like, you fool, you idiot. He isn't who he says he is. But obviously, she was hoodwinked herself. So, I mean.
Yeah, of course. I like the, oh, you must be mistaken. She says, oh, yes. It's like, what a weird, I don't know. It's so funny. Oh, yes.
Well, this is how she continues on. The mistress says, he only wants to bleed you until the day he doesn't need you. I warn you, he'll abandon you as he abandoned her and me and countless others. I've no doubt. I'm telling you, the man was born without a heart. You fool. Fosca says, I confronted him with this information and he made no attempt to deny it. And Ludovic shrugging, says, "At last you know the truth, Signorina, but you as well must face the truth. I've no desire to deceive you any more, but do admit what you ignore. We made a bargain, did we not? And we got what we bargained for. You gave me your money, I gave you my looks, and my charm, and my arm. I would say that more than balances the books. Where's the harm? Now it's through. If women sell their looks, why can't a man? If he can, besides, the money wasn't even yours. It belonged to those ridiculous old bores, your parents."
He only wants to bleed you until the day he doesn't need you. I warn you, he'll abandon you as he abandoned her and me and countless others, I've no doubt. I'm telling you, the man was born without a heart. You fool!
I confronted him with this information, and to his credit, he made no attempt to deny it.
Ah, well, at last you know the truth, Signorina. But you as well must face the truth. I've no desire to deceive you anymore, but do admit what you ignore. We made a bargain, did we not? And we got what we bargained for. You gave me your money, I gave you my looks and my charm and my arm. I would say that more than balances the books. Now it's done. Where's the harm? If women sell their looks, why can't a man if he can? Besides, the money wasn't even yours. It belonged to those ridiculous old bores, your parents.
So sort of in the way that you were talking about the rhyme scheme earlier, and that it's always when it's like something that's been thought through and kind of calculated a little bit. He says in here, the charm and the arm and the harm. And we know that he has done this, however many times now. So this is something that he's probably rehearsed and said before.
Well, just even with like the slight stage direction here, right? It says shrugging but pleasantly, which does feel like it's coming off as like, oh, well, you caught me. Here's my explanation and goodbye. Like he's done this countless times before.
That's how the music sounds as well. It's very like, like there's no brooding undertone to this. But he's just like, well, I did what I did, and we both got what we wanted. So see ya. Like
I'm gonna go back with my Dalmatian now. So
I like the him calling her parents ridiculous old bores. I think that has to be a very pleasing lyric to sing. I think that those words are they flow off the tongue very well.
Besides, the money wasn't even yours. It belonged to those ridiculous old bores. In parentheses, your parents.
Yeah, of course. Just in case you didn't get that the first time. Yeah, I like the change in the music here. That pro shot, there is a change also in the lighting for this section. Like it's not quite so like brightly lit. Oh, there was one other thing I had that I didn't say that I had written down to talk about. In that original cast recording, Donna Murphy, she is a beautiful, rich, low register.
Sure.
But it's very like brooding and the dark tone. And at the beginning of this, when they're meeting Count Ludovic and everything, and she is telling this story and what she thought of him when she first saw him, it's this, she uses this tone to her voice that is much brighter, which really helps to sell she was younger. She was not jaded to the idea of love and life at that point. So I haven't noticed it with any other recordings that I've listened to quite so heavily as that one. But I love the way that sounds and the way that she plays that off. And you get that, I think, even more when you're watching the pro shot for it. But I think that it helps a lot in this section where after this, she kind of goes back to saying all of the things like, oh, the world is horrible,
Yeah. That's good. That's a good call out. I mean, there's another guest called out the fact that Donna Murphy specifically, she has that lower register, but even the way when she speaks as Fosca in this, there's almost a lyrical quality, a sing-song quality to her voice. So she flips in between talking and singing almost imperceptibly to me. Sometimes like, oh yeah, she's just talking here right now, even though it feels like there's a melody going on.
Yeah, and having watched the movie that this was based on, I really missed the music. I was like, oh, this really needs the music to be to tell the story the way I want it to be told. And obviously I'm a little biased,
Yeah.
but
I mean, as a side note, like I totally get why Sondheim watched that movie and thought, oh, this could become a musical, because I totally thought the same thing as watching. I'm like, oh, they should be really breaking out into song at this point. Like
yeah,
it feels like that's what they're
absolutely.
leading up to.
I completely agree. It needed that. It needed the explanation of just the emotional repercussions of those scenes through the music. And I
Mhm.
think you could have inserted any of these songs into the movie and it would have made like it would have been the same movie still, you know?
Right. Just as again, another plot thing that how the mistress says, like, I warn you, he'll abandon you as he abandoned her and me. It's interesting that she puts like another person that we don't even know who it is into the mix.
Well, when they talk about it, and forgive me for keep talking about the movie, but when the Colonel is telling Giorgio about it in the movie, he said that he had two previous marriages.
Right.
So I wonder if that's kind of like a little Easter egg there or something. I don't know. It's just I love this music. It's so great.
Ludovic continues going on and says, forgive me, my dear, but though you are no beauty, I fear you are not quite the victim you appear. Well, let us part by mutual consent and be content. And so good luck and goodbye, I must go. Oh, and yes, we haven't paid the rent since July, just so you know. And so he goes, and Fosca says, I returned home to find my parents impoverished and in poor health. Fosca's health failed. A woman's like a flower. And she goes back to writing, and the Colonel says, she began to suffer her first convulsions. My aunt and uncle nursed her as best they could. A flower's only purpose is to please. I spent months looking for the man. Beauty is power. By then, of course, he'd vanished. Longing a disease. To this day, I dream of finding him and realizing my revenge. And Fosca goes, my father died not long thereafter. How could I be so blind? I couldn't face the world. It took her many months to leave her bed. It took me months to leave my bed. When her mother died, she had nothing really, no one. And so I went to stay with my cousin, who in some way felt responsible for my circumstances.
Forgive me, my dear, but so you are no beauty, I fear. You are not quite the victim you appear. Well, let us part by mutual consent and be content. And so good luck and goodbye, I must go. Oh, and yes, we haven't paid the rent since July, just so you know.
I returned home to find my parents impoverished and in poor health.
Fosca's health failed.
A woman's like a flower.
And she began to suffer her first convulsions. My aunt and uncle nursed her as best they could.
A flower's only purpose is to please.
I spent months looking for the man.
Beauty is power.
By then, of course, he'd vanished.
Longing a disease.
To this day, I dream of finding him and realizing my revenge.
My father died not long thereafter.
How could I be so blind?
I couldn't face the world.
It took her many months to leave my bed. When her mother died, she had nothing really. No one.
And so I went to stay with my cousin, who in some ways felt responsible for my circumstances.
So the first thing that oh my gosh, there's so many people's names in this, Ludovic. The first thing that he says there is that, like, but though you are no beauty, I fear. And sort of the way that you talked about earlier when he had mentioned that he was, that Fosca probably had not heard yet that she was not beautiful. I've always wondered about this. Maybe this is like the first time she had heard someone say that to her, because, you know, she had been with her parents up until that point. And obviously she probably had other interactions that were not just with her parents and her cousin, but this is her being off on her own in the real world, so to speak. So I have to wonder if maybe this is the first time that she's really been given this glimpse into that people and the society she's in do not find her to be a beautiful woman.
Yeah, it's a good call out because, I mean, of course, it's different when your parents call you beautiful versus someone who's romantically interested calls you beautiful. But I do think it's interesting that this starts where, like, hey, my parents, like, raised me not thinking that I was ugly. And, like, this first major relationship I find myself in is, like, that's how he leaves me. Is like, well, you're not really beautiful. I was only here for your money. Bye. Like, that's going to be a little bit of a gut punch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the rhyming of content with rent in the last bit of that is very fun.
Right.
It's another musical about rent. Perfect.
That's right. That's all this is. Yeah. She talks about the flower here, right?
Yeah.
A woman's like a flower. A flower's only purpose is to please. Sorry, a flower's only purpose is to please. Beauty is power. Longing is a disease. How do you read that?
Well, I think that it's interesting because she talks about the flower earlier in the show with the nectar
And the
at the
butterfly,
top of
and
it.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's such a telling moment for her as well earlier when she's, talking about she can't go too deep into things, but she like isn't really too deep into what a person would call womanhood at this point either because she's not married. She lives
hmm
with her cousin. She's in very poor health. So she is not that nectarous flower that she would have considered the book to be earlier, or probably other things as well that she sees
sure.
and just kind of pays no attention to. I love this part because later it comes back, which we'll get to, but at the end of the song, it's the same words that beauty is power, longing a disease.
hmm
So she's kind of planting that seed, but the way that she sings it is still like it's a very beautiful melody. So I'll talk about what they do later, but
Sure. I just wanted to call out the fact that like that concept, beauty is power, longing a disease, is essentially calling out Giorgio to a degree here
oh
because
yeah.
Clara is beautiful and he's been longing for her this entire show, which is like his disease that he's taking on. So I don't know. It feels like that's kind of pointed at this point.
Yes, and he's hearing that, and he'll hear it again at the end of the song, but you're absolutely correct. I think that especially at this point, he's gotten in this very sticky situation with Fosca, or at least in his eyes, the sticky situation with her. And kind of is by the day growing further away from Clara, we also are starting to see less of her and less of her letters, and she isn't popping up as many times throughout the show at this point.
Right.
So they're kind of becoming more not estranged, but they're becoming further apart. And perhaps this seed is kind of planted so that he is seeing this in his periphery with her as well.
And again, telling that she and the Colonel simultaneously say it took her many months to leave her bed. So, like, they are aligned on that. Yeah. And so now the Colonel steps up and he has this long kind of passage here where he says, "Why could I not admit the truth? How could I not have seen through the veneer? I told myself as long as she seems happy, why interfere? Or was I just relieved to know that somebody would want her for a wife? In war, you know the enemy, not always so in life. The enemy was love, selfishness really, but love. All of us blinded by love. That makes everything seem possible. You have to pay a consequence for things that you've denied. This is the thorn in my side."
Why could I not admit the truth? How could I not have seen through the veneer? I told myself as long as she seems happy, why interfere? Or was I just relieved to know that somebody would want her for a wife? In war, you know the enemy, not always so in life. The enemy was love, selfishness really, but love. All of us blinded by love that makes everything seem possible. You have to pay a consequence for things that you've denied. This is the thorn in my side.
I love this section in the music because this is the first time that he's had like a long section in this song. That we get Fosca's little intel on this before when she is singing about the flower and then in her interactions with Count Ludovic and the mistress. But the Colonel is really giving us this is my fault and I have done this to my cousin and I feel like I really have to take care of her because it's on me that this happened. I also love in this the admission of he just was so excited that somebody wanted her that he was eager to jump on it and didn't pay attention to any of the warning signs or do his research on this person first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting part about this Colonel character in many ways is that he definitely is beating himself up over what happened in this very specific case. And so he simultaneously is like, this cousin feels indebted to her family and then like has affection for her, but almost becomes like a father figure later on in the show too. So like there's a lot of these conflicting emotions I think he has with what went on. And specifically in like, you know, in war, you know the enemy, not always so in life. But his idea is that love is the enemy, which also I think, again, is telling for the Colonel, because at least in regards to this show, he is also not married. He isn't. I think that this may have shook him just as much as it did Fosca, where he sees that love as the enemy in total.
And I think, especially when they start talking about this, the enemy was love, selfishness, really, but love. It kind of resembles the lyrical structure of what happens in the garden sequence when Giorgio and Clara are singing simultaneously about love making things possible and all of that. The lyrics that he is singing here are kind of in direct response to that, but in a negative light, which I think is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And especially that all of us blinded by love that makes everything seem possible. That's like a very hard dig at Giorgio, and he doesn't even know it because he hasn't, spoken to Giorgio about that, but Fosca knows that.
Yeah, right.
So I like that. I like the section a lot. Also, the consequence. And that's a great foreshadowing for what is to come.
Sure, you have to pay the consequence. So the song ends with the mistress going, "As long as you're a man, you're what the world will make of you." And then the mistress and the mother say, "Whereas if you're a woman, you're only what it sees." And then all the men sing, "A woman is a flower whose purpose is to please." And then everyone except Giorgio and Fosca sing, "Beauty is power, longing a disease."
As long as you're a man, you're what the world will make of you. Whereas if you're a woman, you're only what it sees.
A woman is a flower whose purpose is to please. Beauty is power, longing a disease.
I never realized what characters it was, what characters were singing this until seeing that pro shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes it even better because I thought that it was just general ensemble, which, like you said, they're, people who are being reused from the ensemble regardless. But having seen them in the context of the storytelling of this flashback, I think that it's really powerful the way that they have set this vocally, because we have all of the things that we know, like about the mother and father specifically. We know that they were very doting on their daughter and that they loved her very much. And this sort of seems like a projection of the way that Fosca and the Colonel are viewing things onto these people that are not there.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing it through the lens of these other people's eyes, which I think is interesting. And then right at the very end, this beauty is power, longing a disease, we had just heard Fosca sing this line. The way that it's very melodic and beautiful when she sings it, and then here the chords are so dissonant and it does not sound good. It sounds good, but it doesn't sound pleasing.
Right. That's a great distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I had thought on this a lot. I haven't really come to any concrete conclusions about why I think that necessarily is, but I think that it's kind of a warped perception on what beauty is and where longing leads you. And it's like warped in the way that it falls on Giorgio's ears. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking maybe that was the reason it sounded like that. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know. I guess this thematically, we're seeing different versions of passion throughout the show, right? We have that, sexual passion at the very beginning with Clara and Giorgio, which kind of, goes through the entire show. We have like a deeper passion, I don't know what the right word is I'm trying to look for here, but by the end of it, it's like an all-consuming love for a person that's not just physical, but it's like all the other stuff that's wrapped into it. Like that's where this show leads to. And this is kind of like the one-sided passion where definitely Fosca is in like lust, love with this guy who does not care for her at all. So I think it's important that we see kind of like the three different versions of how this story goes and the impact that it has on a multitude of our characters. I don't know. That's how I guess I kind of read this.
Yeah, I like that. I think that this song, as I stated at the start of our conversation about it, they don't give you any of this in the movie version of
Right.
this story, and it doesn't really do any of what I think this song really remedies for it. I think that this song singularly makes the love that Giorgio feels for Fosca more believable at the end.
Right. Yeah.
Because you kind of get this like softening of the way we can view Fosca through this song that isn't really possible without her and the Colonel telling us this story, and it deepens the complexity of the connection between the Colonel and Giorgio as well, because he comes back later and he says, I've confided in you, I've trusted you, I've welcomed you into my home, and you've done this such a great disgrace to me and my family. But we have this just deepening of that connection between the two of them, but also Fosca allowing Giorgio in to see all of these things that, maybe she hasn't told anyone. It doesn't, like I said, hear that she would have talked with the Colonel about these intricacies of that relationship and what happened. So I think that this does just wonders for the storytelling of this whole musical of the piece,
Yeah. This is definitely something that I brought up in a later episode. I think part of the issue with this show and why a good deal of people or a good amount of people kind of bounce off of it is that unlike other Broadway shows, even other Sondheim shows, there's no one who comes out and says like, this is how you should feel about all this. You, the audience, I'm saying, like, this is how you, the audience, should feel about the events that are going on in this show. Because in a standard show, it's kind of like, hey, here's a problem. This is how I feel about it. This is how I'm going to deal with it. And then in this show, it's much more, here's my reality. Here's how I feel about it. End of scene. Like, there's no one that's ever going to come out and be like, and now this is how we're going to resolve all this. All of it is just like emotion, big emotion, and then like death at the very end. And so you kind of have to do a lot of like the heavy lifting in many cases of like, oh, like this is connected to this and that is connected to that. And this idea over here is commenting on this idea. I guess that's a long way of me saying like, I get it. Like, I understand why some people bounce off of this to such a degree as they have.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people that go to musical theater for the enjoyment of the art, just liking to see it. And it is. I mean, lots of people say like, oh, I go to the theater to be taken out of my own head and to enjoy what's being presented to me on the stage. And that is not what Passion is aiming for.
No.
They really want you to really consider I would say probably like the emotional and moral implications of what the story is trying to tell you.
Right.
And I feel like it is just something that not everybody is going to get or like or want to continue going down. But every time you think about it, it does something. I don't know. For me, like every time I have listened to the show really intentionally, I have come to understand more or something different, or there's just layers of complexities that come out of the woodwork of the show, just in the lines and the performances of the people who have played these parts. I mean, everybody is going to bring something a little different.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really beautiful in that way. It's a very living piece of art.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's kind of my message to people who might even be listening to this who are like, this just isn't my show. I just don't really enjoy it, which is honestly totally valid. You don't have to like everything. Not every piece of art is made for every specific person.
Yeah.
I will push back, though, on people saying that it's just meant to be a drag for whatever it is, 90 minutes to 2 hours of time.
Yeah.
Where I think it's actually much more complicated than that. I think there's intentionality behind everything that's going on. You still don't have to like it, but I think that there's much more intentionality behind it.
Well, and I know there are people who don't want to have to put in the mental work to figure something out like this. And I don't think that that's wrong. I think that that's, to each his own. People are going to enjoy art and theater in their own way. And I think that this show could provide every person that comes to it with something, if they are open to it.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come and talk about a flashback with me. My final question that I've been asking every single person here this season is in regards to the actual title. So, of course, this show is called Passion. So you can take this question in any way you want. But like right now, what would you consider to be the thing that you're the most passionate about?
Oh, there's so many things. So I'm a teacher. I'm an elementary school teacher, and I have a lot of things going on for my job right now. But the thing that I'm probably most passionate about that I'm really excited to get started is I'm going to start working on my master's degree this summer.
Oh, wow. That's great.
I am getting my master's degree in a master's of education in Kodai, music education, which is one of the major music pedagogies. Zoltán Kodály was a Hungarian composer and music pedagogue who developed uh, strategies and things for teaching children, predominantly young children, but it can go all the way through schooling. And it's something that I really connected with because it's taught primarily through teaching folk song of the people from wherever they are. So obviously for me, that would be in America, but wherever that happens to be. And I have found that that is a very effective way of teaching children to be comfortable with music and to love it, and also have a lot of knowledge of the songs of their people, which I think is really important. So I am really excited to get started with that. It's going to take me a while because it's a 3-week summer intensive program. So I'll be there for 4. I'll do it for 4 consecutive summers, but it works out perfect because I teach for the rest of the year. And then I don't know if I said this last time, I work for the Glimmerglass Festival Opera in Cooperstown, New York, which is, I don't know, probably about 3-4 hours from New York City. It's in central New York State, and I'm the house manager there over the summers, and I love that job. It is a fantastic connection to professional theater for me, in a way that I can still have my job as a elementary school teacher, which is something that I also love very much, very passionate about on theme here. But
that's so cool.
I'm able to go there and have something else.
Still do all of it, yeah. Not to like derail this too much, but what you just said there is in regards to your master's about the focus on cultural song. What does that look like in the United States specifically when we talk about that? Because you could go down that avenue in multiple different ways. So like, what does that look like for you specifically?
Well, I teach in a very rural school district with a not a very diverse population, but I think in different places you could go a lot of different ways with that. I would like my program and my teaching to be very centered around teaching, the music of lots of different cultures that are from America specifically or came to America, and my kids to understand that not one type of music is best, that all music has its place and its value, and that they can love something and love something else all the same without them being similar at all. So,
well, especially in America, because like not quite the same thing, but it is, part of the same conversation. I took this really great course when I was in university called The History of Rock and Roll, and talk about a forum that took a lot of inspiration from a bunch of different sources and then smashed them together. But I always love that as like, of taking somewhat maybe even disparate ideas, and it's like, now we're going to combine them together and create this new thing. Is always an interesting exploration, or like history lesson almost.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's lovely to be able to share all of those different music pathways with my kids, because they all like such different things and different things that I like too. They frequently, and obviously I love musical theater, but I also love rock music and things like that. But they see me very much as somebody who likes choir music only sometimes because I'm their choir teacher.
Right.
But I do this thing where I have the only thing that I allow myself to buy whenever I go to see like a Broadway tour or something is I will let myself get a magnet because it's inexpensive and I don't have to store them places. So I have all of my magnets on the front of my desk, and they frequently will ask me about them, and they love it when I get a new one. They're so excited about it. And then I get to like kind of share that music with them. So like, for example, I just saw the opening of the tour for Shucked in Schenectady, which is out near Albany in New York. And that one is a very fun magnet because it's in the shape of a piece of corn on the cob. And they love that magnet. They're very excited about it.
That's amazing. You then probably saw someone who's going to be a guest on this show because they are currently traveling with Shucked around the country.
Oh, so fun. Yeah, that's great. It was a wonderful tour. I really enjoyed it.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. You can send emails to puttingittogetherpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow Sondheim Podcast on Instagram. This is an independent production, and you can support this show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Putting Together is available on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere you get podcasts from. Consider subscribing so that you never miss an episode. Next week, we're talking about 2 songs, The Sunrise Letter and Is This What You Call Love? Which, if you have to ask it, the answer is no. As always, a big thank you to the great Chris Taniguchi, who designed the podcast artwork, and Nick Driscoll for composing our theme music. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Yes, I know. Goodbye for now.